Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back. Thanks for subscribing. There's a saying in advertising, or there is a saying if you haven't heard it. 50% of your ad dollars are wasted. You just don't know which 50%. So in other words, you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on advertising, and some of it just goes nowhere, does nothing. But you can't tell which 50% it is. And that statement, 50% of your ad dollars are wasted. You just don't know which 50%. And I think the percentage is 50%, that at least what I've heard. That's been around for a long time. And that's something that, certainly Madison Avenue goes to its big clients and says. I've heard it from smaller marketers. You're going to do things and you just can't know whether it's working or not. And it kind of makes sense. You have a billboard. Is that billboard working for you? We'll pick on McDonald's. Is that billboard working for you? I mean, can the local McDonald's see an uptick in business by virtue of the fact that there's a billboard? Or maybe a radio advertisement that's out there. It's probably a little easier to determine what's effective in the digital world, certainly with like online advertising. You can see, people can, make a post and they can see that particular post, where sales came from a particular post or something that was said. So you're a little bit better at doing those things, but still you don't have 100% certainty as to how things are working. You could have a post, somebody could see it and not click on it, and then see a second post, and that be the one they click through, or maybe they think about your product or service at another point in time, and that prompts them to find you online and purchase. I've done that. I've seen advertisements, and then at some point saying, I kind of need that particular product or that particular service, and you do a search and you find them. And so they wouldn't see that the particular post was more effective than another. I'm not an advertising person, but I know the statement is out there is that 50% of your ad dollars are wasted. You just don't know what 50%. And I bring that up because it really has relevance in the networking world. A lot of what you do in networking really goes nowhere, but you can't say what is a waste and what is going to be a value. And I feel that every day. I have a saying that I throw at my wife all the time. We'll get up and we'll go walking and kind of share with one another about our days. Hey, this is what I've got going, or this is what happened yesterday with this call or whatever. And I'll always say, with respect to a call that maybe didn't turn out to be what I hoped it might turn into, I always say, well, I'm glad I had the call rather than not having the call. Meaning I would rather have the opportunity than not have the opportunity because you just don't know. You don't know. And I don't want to say 50% of my efforts in networking are wasted, but to a degree, it's probably true. The percentage might even be higher. I don't know. It's really kind of hard to measure. I mean, again, McDonald's puts up a billboard, and that billboard may be up a year, and 18 months or a year after it comes down, 18 months after it goes up, 6 months after it comes down, it's just, the fact that billboard was there every day just kind of ground into somebody's mind the fact that, hey, McDonald's is around the corner. I have this option. Or maybe it's a pizza shop or a place to get your hair cut or whatever. And it's kind of the same thing with respect to networking. I don't know. A lot of times I get on calls with people. Yeah, a lot of the calls I get on, and you don't certainly don't know these things on the front end, right? You know you're introduced to somebody, and you kind of go into calls with hopes that it leads somewhere. So, well, sometimes I know, right? Sometimes I know I'm on a call with somebody. Hey, here's this person. They're just started in business. Would you kind of give them some pointers? Would you give some tips on networking? Okay, great. I'm happy to do that. I'm not really having any sort of expectation with respect to what might come from that call. That said, you don't know that somewhere down the line that might turn into something. They might be interested in what you're about. Oh, I didn't realize that that's what AmSpirit did. How could I get involved? So I guess you really don't know with respect to calls. Every contact has opportunity. Every call has opportunity. But that doesn't mean that every call becomes opportunity. It doesn't mean that every interaction becomes opportunity. Every contact becomes opportunity. It just means there's the potential for something, for something to be said, or for something to come from that. Um, and so you just need to, as people are presented to you, you need to take the time to meet with people. And I've had this conversation with Berta Medina, who I've interviewed on this podcast. I've been on hers as well. And she's of the mind, same mind. Listen, let's just introduce people to one another, and who knows what will come from that. She introduced me to somebody recently, and it was pretty one-sided. I know this person's new in business. They had clear ideas as to what they were looking for. Really wanted to pick my brains about what they were looking for. Never, never turned the tables. Never said, "Hey, how could I help you?" And I'm not going to force that issue, because if they're not of that mind that, "Hey, this is what I could use," I could tell them, and they're probably, it's going to be in one ear and out the other. They're going to be focused on me for as long as I'm talking, and as soon as I'm done talking, it's going to be a complete core dump of what it is that I'm about. In other words, they're really not interested in networking. They're interested in somebody helping them, and they're not of a maturity yet to realize that, hey, I need to do my part too. I need to do my part too, as far as trying to connect Frank. And who do I know that could help him? I'm asking him for help. Who do I know? And so there are calls that are like that. There are calls that I will get on where somebody will go on, 30-minute call. They'll go on for 27 and a half minutes about who they are, what they do, and what they need. And then before it's all said and done, we'll say, "Oh, well, hey, how can I help you?" Realizing that, hey, I've just made a big ask. I've just taken up all the time, and I know I need to reciprocate. So this is how I am going to reciprocate. You know, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna ask here with 2.5 minutes left in the call. Not that the call has to end in 30 minutes. It's not like we're calling from prison and this is being timed and we only have 30 minutes for the call. Um, but you have to wonder at that point in time, are they really sincere, or are they just giving lip service to the notion of, hey, how can I help? Um, some people will schedule a follow up, and they'll recognize, geez, I'm really sorry I've dominated much of the conversation. I'd like to have a follow up and really learn about you. And sometimes they're sincere about that. Sometimes the follow up is another opportunity for them to devote the lion's share of the time giving you an update on what they do. Um, and everything that's come out of my mouth at this point with respect to networking, having calls with people, sounds somewhat cynical, and I can see that, and I feel that from time to time. But every so often, you run into some great people. You run into some great people, and you just don't know. A percentage of who you're talking to, a percentage of your networking is not going to turn into anything. But you can't say with certainty what will and what won't. You really need to just have the calls and play them out. Now, I'm not saying you need to spend every waking minute having these calls and or interactions or Zoom calls or whatever, however it manifests itself. I tend not to do cups of coffee because they're very expensive. They're very time intensive. Getting in the car, driving with somebody, and sitting down and meeting them. Um, they're very time intensive. A few weeks back, I had coffee with Regan Rodriguez. Uh, Big exception to my general rule. He emailed me. We were exchanging emails. He emailed me the 11th, early in the morning. Hey, I'm in town. If you have time, I'll meet you. And I had time. I was like, okay, yeah, let's meet. Because otherwise he's in Miami, Florida, and to suggest, well, you're in town, why don't we do a Zoom call? Well, we could do a Zoom call anytime. I haven't seen him in probably 10 years. It was great to catch up. Um, so I don't know that any of my rules are hard and fast. I mean, I will certainly have coffee with people, but by and large, it's like, okay, let's do a 30-minute Zoom call. I can do a couple of these 30-minute Zoom calls in the time it would take me to do one face-to-face, let's have coffee across town. And anymore, my network has really kind of expanded nationally, if not internationally, so Zoom calls really make the most sense. But you don't know. Sometimes I'm connected to people and it's like, wow, this could be a game changer. And you get on there and you realize it's really not a game changer and they're really all about themselves. And then once in a while you'll get on a call and you'll be wondering, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I having this call? This person it doesn't feel like it's going to make any sense. And it turns out that it makes a whole bunch of sense. Um, but you don't know that on the front end. Sometimes you'll have a call with people or a call. When I say call, I mean Zoom or regular call, generally Zoom anymore, or Teams or Skype or whatever people want to do. You get what I'm getting. You understand what I'm driving at. And it doesn't seem to go anywhere. Um, you've connected them to people, and then they come out of the woodwork and they make an introduction for you, or they remember you. I call it just planting seeds. Sometimes I can tell people are stumped. Hey, this is what I'm looking for to help me. I'm looking to get on podcasts. I'm looking to do webinars. I'm looking for introductions of people who would like to be in a networking group, like to start a networking group, who would want help doing these sorts of things. And I can tell they're stumped, but then, 3 months, 6 months, a year later, they introduce me to somebody. So obviously that call wasn't wasted. It just didn't manifest itself in the moment. And so you can't judge that as a failure. And that's why I say you really never know. You just never know when you're out there planting these seeds. And you just need to embark upon it. And you need to be judicious with your time. I don't spend all of my time making on calls. In fact, most mornings I'm not available for calls because that's time that I can be actually doing real work. And what I will do then is if I have too many calls in a particular day, or if it gets to that point, I'll block that day out. In other words, if 3 weeks from now I see that Monday has got, 2 or 3 calls already on the schedule, I might say, you know what, I'm just going to block out the rest of the day. So I don't schedule, so nobody's using my Calendly and getting on there. I can add one if I really need to. Regan Rodriguez calls and says, hey, I want to talk to you, or let's meet for coffee or something like that, and I have the time and I want to do it. I have that flexibility, but I just don't allow anybody to get on there. And the reason I do that is to kind of pace myself. I mean, otherwise you could literally have 10 calls a day. I mean, there are people out there willing to, talk. And you end up having 10 calls a day. Matt Ward will share with me he might have 30 calls over the course of a week. Well, you stop and do the math, that's 6 calls a day. And I think he's kind of slowed down on that. But I do as well because, you need to get work done. I need to run AmSpirit Business Connections, and that involves websites and dealing with members and trainings and writing content and so on and so forth. But by and large, a portion of your networking time is wasted, or feels like it's wasteful, but you don't know, and you can't. There's really no way around it. There's really no way around the wasting ad dollars in advertising terms. There's really no way around wasting networking time. The best thing you can do is just come in and be prepared. Come in certainly mentally prepared that, you know what, chances are the person's not going to be buying on that call. That's not the purpose of it. Chances are nothing will manifest itself in the moment. But be prepared with a good ask. When somebody says, hey, what are you looking for? Be prepared to say, well, these are the things that I'm really looking to accomplish what I'm doing. Be prepared with that. Be prepared to try and help them, because that will endear them to you better. But just understand that you might not even have an opportunity to deploy those. But that's just part of it. That's part of it. And always be of the mind that, I'm glad I had the call. I would rather have had the call than not have the call. And just be of that mindset and move on to the next one, because you just never know when that next conversation you're turning over that rock and it turns into something. And I look at things I'm working on right now, people I'm talking to right now, and kind of where they came from. And it's like, oh, wow, that was something that happened 6 months ago. And it's just kind of manifested itself. And I've done some things for some people, and they've felt inclined to try and really help me. And I appreciate them for that. But they didn't help me in the moment. It was, you have to kind of give things time to incubate. So a portion of your time is wasted. Nothing you can do about that. There's nothing you can do about that. Don't spend all your time doing networking calls or having coffee or going to events. So you want to limit those sorts of things. Don't want to limit them too much, and try and judge people, because chances are you'll be wrong. But you just have to kind of go with it and just understand that, that's part of the game. So good luck, but you're better off to have the call than not have the call.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today, and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.